What do Los Angeles, Yosemite National Park, Napa Valley, Mount Shasta, Crater Lake National Park, Glacier National Park, and Seattle all have in common? They were all part of our 3,500-mile test drive of the 2012 GMC Acadia Denali. Our adventure started on the freeways of Los Angeles, where we headed north towards Mammoth Lakes on the east side of the Sierra Nevada mountains. We stayed cool in the 105-degree heat with our dual-zone climate control and cooled seats. They're heated too, but in July, that feature wasn't very appealing. We made a few stops taking in the scenery and the unique geographical topography that seemed to be changing by the mile. As we cruised through the high desert, we stopped for lunch with a postcard view of the highest peak in the lower 48, Mount Whitney, standing in at 14,505 feet high. Continuing north, the relatively straight Highway 395 allowed us to take in the Acadia's smooth ride, as well as its decent passing power. It's a relatively large vehicle with a V6, so it's not the fastest kid on the block, but it has enough power to get up and go when you need it. Entering Mammoth Lakes, we were amazed at the jagged peaks and towering evergreens that seemed to just appear as we made the quick transition from desert to mountains. We chose to stay the night in a campsite on Lake Mary, just outside of town. A campfire and bratwurst ensued, and the Acadia spent the night shining in the moonlight. Day 2, we found ourselves driving through one of the most famous national parks in America, Yosemite. The roads were windy and the Acadia's steering was solid and responsive. It's not a vehicle you throw around corners, but rather glide through with ease. At this point, our average fuel economy was just over 20 miles per gallon, which is a hair over the 19 miles per gallon they claim for combination city and highway driving. We drove across Tioga Pass, stopping a few times along the way for pictures. Once we arrived in Yosemite Valley, the sunroof was a great way for us to view the towering cliffs and cascading waterfalls above. And if we had additional passengers, the dual sunroof would have come in handy. The drive from Yosemite to Napa Valley consisted of mostly freeway driving with views of agricultural fields. However, as we approached the Bay Area, we drove through an impressive wind farm and, of course, had to stop for a picture. Quickly proceeding through the lower Napa Valley, we enjoyed one of the curviest roads I've ever had the pleasure to experience. Final destination for Day 2, Lake Berryessa. On Day 3, we found ourselves looking to test the Acadia in a new way, off-road. After passing scenic Shasta Lake, we found some inviting Forest Service roads and hit the dirt. With Mount Shasta as our backdrop, we proceeded to test the off-road prowess of our front-wheel drive crossover. There is an all-wheel drive option available, which would have helped on some of the soft sand and steeper slopes. However, for front-wheel drive, it handled the rough roads just fine. After a romp in the dust, we headed north to Oregon and Crater Lake National Park. For the third straight night, we set up camp. By this point, the Acadia was getting quite the lived-in look. It was carrying our firewood, camera gear, a cooler full of food, and all of our camping gear. That night we actually stayed in the park, so right away on Day 4, we were in some historic beauty. Crater Lake was formed over 7,000 years ago after the collapse of Mount Mazama. It's the deepest lake in the U.S. with a depth of 1,949 feet. You can drive around the rim of the entire lake, which treats visitors to breathtaking views from every angle. Continuing north through Oregon, we started looking at our watches as we needed to be back in Seattle that evening. We continued through the evergreens, which soon gave way to grasslands and agriculture. After crossing the mighty Columbia River into Washington, we made a unique stop at a Klickitat County War Memorial, Stonehenge. This monument was completed in 1929 and was dedicated to those who died in World War I. After a short walk in the 100-degree heat, we saddled up and continued on to Seattle. There we met 5 friends who accompanied us to a cabin in Montana just outside of Kalispell. We spent a long weekend touring the area and visiting Glacier National Park via the popular Going to the Sun Road. This road was completed in 1932 and takes you through the park and up to Logan Pass and the Continental Divide. Our trip with the 2012 GMC Acadia allowed us to truly put it through the paces over a 12-day extended test drive. We maxed out its seating capacity, cargo space, including the roof racks, off-roading capability, and got the opinions of 7 31-year-old males, and the sentiment was the same. This is a proper American crossover.